Welcome to the Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross Show, awakening your full potential and expanding your understanding of how to live fully and joyfully by making conscious choices that promote and maintain vitality in all areas of your life. Now here's your host, Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross. Please be sure to listen to this episode in an environment that is safe. Do not listen to this recording while driving a car or operating any kind of machinery.
Hi, everybody. I'm here on the Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross Show with Francine Rogers. Welcome
Hi,
to the
everyone.
So Francine and I are going to be talking today about the overlap between eating disorders and financial problems. So let me just tell you a little bit about Francine. She has previously worked at a large brokerage company where she was a professional liability account executive. That's a mouthful.
That is.
She went back to school and graduated in 2016 with a degree in business administration from the University of San Diego. And while attending USD, she had to face her own disastrous finances and began the process of restoring her credit. In addition to restoring her credit, she began to learn about personal finances and creating wealth through investing and credit leveraging. Although her credit score has increased, a worthwhile goal, she realized that she had to change her poverty attitude to a wealth-building mindset. So Francine believes that to truly eradicate debt, you must delve into the emotional reasons why debt has accumulated in the first place. In her process, she examines the client's financial goals and employs a direct, upfront approach to working with individuals to achieve their desired results. So thanks again for being on this show, Francine. I think this is a topic that most people don't really think much about. They don't really think about that link between our eating behaviors and how we deal with money. So what can you tell us about what you learned from your own experience?
Well, in my own experience, I learned that when I got lonely, I ate and I spent money. Spent money irresponsibly. When I got stressed, I ate and spent money irresponsibly. So my credit score, my bad money habits didn't necessarily come from me mismanaging money. It was from this emotional, dysfunctional neediness inside of me. And I started to make the correlation between, okay, Francine, you feel bad. Why are you spending money? You eat. Is it because you're lonely? Is it because you're battling these feelings of low self-esteem? So I would eat or I would spend money. It was an either or thing. So what I found out, and I'm still going through this journey as I'm really focused on my health right now. My eating of choice is salty stuff. Yeah. So I sit down and I'm sitting there gouging a bag of potato chips. I'm like, okay, Francine, what is this about? And most of the time, it has nothing to do with me being hungry or I need a little snack or something. It's always something emotional going on. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed. I'm depressed. I'm thinking about my business. And so those are the correlations I see when I tend to spend more money or when I eat too much.
So think that for people who tend to spend a lot of money, it's also those same people who overeat and those people who maybe restrict their food intake. Do they have possibly restrictive patterns around money? I mean, is it over for both or under for both?
You know what? It's an excess, or it's either you don't eat or you eat too much or you drink too much or have too much sex. It's an excess, and it's always something where it's so out of control, where you are you're just moving into this kind of behavior and there's never enough. I remember vividly, I was so stressed at my job before I left, and I came home and I ate and I ate and I was crying and I'm eating, and then I sat down and I was on the internet and I'm, Facebook and everything. Then I go over to Amazon and I start buying stuff. And instead of me confronting those feelings, I tend to push them away, push them down, ignore them, and I'm out of control eating or spending money.
Yeah.
So it's important to recognize that feeling, what you have, and start to deal with those emotions. And the eating and the spending money will eventually those problems get confronted when you deal with the core problem of the emotional dysfunction or brokenness you have inside of you.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that the same things that cause overeating, which are the emotions that drive us to binge or eat compulsively, overeat compulsively, or emotional eating and stress eating, are the same ones that lead to overspending. As a matter of fact, as we were talking about earlier, I was really surprised to find that there's a few research studies on this very topic. And there's one done in England where they looked at college students and they discovered that extreme attitudes about food and eating predicted short-term financial difficulties, primarily for the women students. And they talked about that being part of kind of a vicious cycle, which is exactly what you're describing. And the author of the study said that this vicious cycle where negative attitudes toward eating increase the risk of financial difficulties is exacerbated by the kind of emotions and stress that we're talking about. Some of the emotions that we see with binge eating, like feeling guilty when you've overeaten or feeling ashamed, can then also promote that trip to Amazon.com or the online shopping network. I don't even know if anyone goes there anymore now that we have Amazon. But in that study, they found more financial difficulties. They also found that many of the students come from a lower socioeconomic status to begin with, and that their eating predicted these financial difficulties. I've also seen clients of mine who have gotten into financial trouble just from binging. So in other words, the cost of the amount of food that they were charging on their credit cards and running up debt for to buy these binge foods was actually throwing them into financial difficulties. Have you seen that too?
Oh, not only seen it, I've experienced it. When I sit down with a client and we talk about their budget, and most clients don't realize how much they spend money eating out. And so when I bring it to their attention, like when I'm looking at their budget, I'm seeing $1,000, $1,200, $1,400, and there's only 2 people in their family.
Wow, that is a lot.
That is a lot. And I look at myself, I love salty food, I love Mexican food, and I used to go out to eat at least 3 times a day.
3 times a day. Wow, that is expensive. Yeah.
It is very expensive. Even if you're talking somewhere in the low amount of $20, $25, you start doing the numbers. Let's say $20 a day times 5 is 100, times 4 weeks is 400, $400 a month just by eating out. And then it's not healthy. It wreaks havoc on your budget. And the thing about it is, how hard is it to just go in there and fix something? But you know, it's almost like you have that emotional brokenness that you have to feed it. I used to feel like good when I used to sit there and binge and eat. Yeah. I felt good. It was like a self-soothing thing. And like you just discussed, later on, you're like, Francine, did you really have to eat a whole pizza? We're like, really, Francine? And then the guilt comes, and it's like a vicious cycle. It's unbelievable. And when I made that connection, when I started to realize that, and now I'm so cognizant of it, it's amazing how much better I feel that I have to confront the emotions without using anything, without food or without money. And it's okay to feel those emotions. I just have to determine how I soothe myself, how I recover from those temporary kind of feelings, and then move into a more healthy kind of, I don't know, maybe exercising or writing out my feelings or reading. So it doesn't necessarily have to be eating and spending money, but I'm learning that process as we speak.
Well, tell me a little bit more about what you call the poverty attitude, changing from a poverty attitude to a wealth building mindset. What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, I always saw it as I grew up in a single family household and no one really spoke to me about money. And so a poverty mindset, I paid my bills because I saw my mom pay my bills, but I always paid the minimum. I never did more. I never thought about paying my credit cards in full, because when you pay your credit cards in full, it translates to during the month, you're looking at how much you're spending on your credit cards, and your mind automatically says, well, can I pay that off in the end of the month? And I always thought, oh, I can make a $25 monthly payment. I'm just good. And so That's a poverty mindset. And I was reading something on Twitter like not too long ago, and it said poverty charges interest. And what that means is exactly when you ignore the little things like the light goes on in your car and you ignore it because you don't have the money or you don't have the room on your credit card, you don't have any emergency savings or anything like that. You ignore it. You ultimately pay more. And so because you have this poverty mindset where you're always paying the minimum, you're not saving, you're not budgeting, it ultimately charges interest because you're going to be paying more on the back end with high interest loans, paying more for a car, paying high interest car notes. And that's what a poverty mindset essentially is.
So that's really a great explanation. And I don't think many people think about how if your credit score is low, then you can't get the low interest loans. You end up with those high interest loans, or you may not be able to buy a car on installment. You may have to go and buy a used car, a not so good car, and then that can lead to not being able to make it to work and da 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 da. It really is a vicious cycle once you're in that poverty mindset, isn't it?
Exactly. And the thing about it is you don't even realize you're in that mindset. You don't even realize that while you're eating out all the time. And eating out is okay if you're eating out at fine dining, if you're having a nice piece of fish for dinner. But when you're going to like a 4-for-4, like a Wendy's, a 4-for-4, something like that, fast food each and every day, then that's part of the whole poverty mindset. You're thinking, oh, okay, I can eat this $4 meal every day. It's doing havoc on your health and it's doing havoc on your finances. And I feel so much better when I have a great piece of fish, some steamed vegetables, and maybe, I might have like smoothie or something to help that sweet
craving
urge. Yeah, craving when I get it. I feel so much better physically, mentally. I'm able to do more. I'm able to focus more as opposed to putting all kinds of grease in my body and then feeling like crap at the end of it and feeling guilty and then spending $4 when I could just come home and just make a nice dinner.
And actually, it has a long-term effect too, because I think a lot of people think of fast food as a treat or eating out. I'm going to treat myself. So I feel bad about myself, or I'm upset or lonely or unhappy. And so if I eat out, it's sort of like treating myself. I recognize that in my own life where I was eating out, not as much as what you're talking about, but still a lot for me, eating 4 or 5 times a week. And it was kind of like my little adventure because, I work from home, I live alone, and it was my chance to get out and be around people. And then I just had to ask myself, okay, that's great, treat yourself. But do you need to treat yourself every day?
Yes.
Does every meal need to be a treat? And why do you need to use food as your only way of treating yourself or having a little adventure? Are there other things I could do to treat myself instead?
That's so true. And I'm with you. I work from home and I get a little isolated at times. I want to talk to people. And so for me, instead of me going to somewhere to eat, I just go take a walk on the beach. And that is just, I can't believe it just clears my head. I'm outside. I talk to people. I meditate. I pray. I just feel so alive when I'm at the beach. So you have to find that place that gives you those type of emotions, those type of feelings where you're at peace, where you're not out of control and gorging on something, whether it's alcohol, eating, spending money. You have to find those activities that give you that kind of calmness and peace.
So someone who's listening is hearing and identifying with what we're talking about. Can you talk a little bit about how you made that transition from a poverty attitude to a wealth building mindset? Like, what were the steps that you went through that are helping you? Because you said you're still in the process.
It was like a moment. I'm like, I just got tired of feeling the way that I did. I got tired of being unhappy. I got tired of always thinking that I'm less than everyone else because of my weight or because of my long-lasting low self-esteem. And you know what? I had to look at myself and value myself for who I was and love myself where I was at. And part of it was I was making a lot of money, but I wasn't seeing the fruits of it. I wasn't investing. I wasn't saving any money. All I was doing was consuming and spending and eating. And after a while, and this has been going on for like 25, 30 years, and I got so tired of it. When I went back to school, I knew there was a bigger purpose in my life, and I could not fulfill that purpose if I was stuck in this place all the time. So I started taking small steps, because I always say success is in your daily routine. So I took small steps. And when you're talking about breaking the habits of overeating and binging and eating salt every day for 20 plus years, it's hard to do it all in one day. You have to make small steps. So I cut out eating salt.
But
So
that seems like a big step, though, not a small step.
to me, you know what? I was still eating fast food, but I would tell them no salt on anything. And it just didn't have the same kind of flavor for me because I just love salt. And it just sort of changed my appetite. And then I started eating at home a little bit more. And then I started like walking a little bit more. And then I had to consult with somebody. I've been talking with my chiropractor for years about my weight. And I finally went to him and I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of being frustrated all the time. Emotionally, I was just like, I'd be driving and I just want to cut somebody out. And there was all kind of emotions wrapped up with me feeling as miserable as I was. And so I started making small steps. And as I started taking these small steps towards happiness and being fulfilled and being at peace, it really helped me make the big step to walk away from my job, which was making me very unhappy, and start my own business.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing you saying, and I want to just reemphasize this for the listeners, is that the first step really is kind of becoming woke.
Yes.
To what is going on in your life. Like, why are you really so miserable? And what are the things that are causing you to be miserable? And it sounds like you became more aware of that connection between your overeating and your low self-esteem, and how that was kind of a vicious cycle that you were trapped in.
Yes. And as I started taking small steps, I didn't realize, I didn't understand, or maybe I was just ignorant about it. I started feeling like it was hard. Don't get me wrong. It's still hard. I started feeling better. Like the immediate effects of not having salt, I started sleeping better. I started to be less bloated. And then just exercising, I felt like a little bit more joy. And I was still under a lot of stress, but I felt like I could manage that stress because I wasn't using these negative habits that I employed over 20 plus years. I was starting replacing those habits with more positive habits. And then talking to my chiropractor as we're talking through it, I stopped, and it's still a process. I'm still stopping that negative self-talk in my head when it comes to when I can't eat, when I have to confront it. And so it's a process, but so much happier, so much more fulfilled. And I'm moving my way towards a healthier lifestyle.
So the first step is becoming aware and making those connections, what your behaviors are and how you feel and vice versa. And then the third step is deciding on a few small steps to take. For you, it was cutting out salt. For somebody else, it may be just eating more at home or not having desserts 3 times or every night, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. Sometimes if you're eating sweets all day, sometimes it can be as little as, okay, I'm not going to eat sweets after 4 o'clock.
Right.
Or
something simple like
something
that.
very simple and manageable and something doable that you feel that you can do. And then automatically for me, it started moving towards, I'm not eating out anymore.
Yeah.
Because
So you began to see that eating out was really just your coping strategy. It wasn't something you totally enjoyed necessarily all the time. Like for me, you know, that recognition of, oh my goodness, is this the only way I have to deal with feeling isolated? No, it's not. And do I need to do this every day? No, I don't.
yes,
So I still eat out and I still enjoy eating out, but I don't crave it. I don't feel deprived if I'm not eating out. And I think that's a key thing to throw in here is don't take a step that's so big where you're going to feel like you're depriving yourself. You know,
yes,
like don't say, I'm never going to eat desserts again. If you love your desserts, go ahead, girl, eat some desserts. But, you know, just make it more reasonable and make
yes,
sure that it's something where you don't feel deprived. And I always say that because people don't recognize that when you feel deprived, you can use willpower for a little bit of time to get you over the hump, but it doesn't last forever. So whenever you feel deprived, that's just setting yourself up for the next binge. So
Absolutely. And I remember over the years, people were like, why don't you just do that no carb diet? You can lose weight really fast. Well, the thing about it is, it's not about losing weight. It's about not just being physically healthy. It's about being emotionally healthy.
and financially healthy.
And financially healthy. You want spiritual, financially, emotionally. You want all those areas to be in sync so you can live a life full of purpose. And so I'm finding that out. And the only regret I have is that it took me 20, 25 years to figure that out. But that's okay, because some people never figure that out. And then they live this life that doesn't have any purpose or meaning, and they don't get to pursue their passion. What I'm embarking on now, opening a new business, this has brought on a whole new set of feelings and anxiety for me. And I'm okay with that because I've done the work to confront that. Every day, it's a battle, not so much to do the work in the actual business, but to confront those old demons that want to come back and say, you know, you're not worthy. You can't do this. You're having trouble. And I've done the work. I can face those demons, and I have to stay vigilant. I never want to be in a position where I forget about the work that I've done. So it's a daily, not a battle, but I just want to be cognizant of the fact what can happen when those emotions come about and what I've done in the past. And I need to stop those kinds of behaviors.
Yeah, I really want to just highlight what you just said, because one thing that's so important is what you said about it's not about the food. Because so many people motivate themselves to make changes in their life for the sake of appearance so they can lose weight. People think that if they lose weight, then they're going to have the perfect job, have the perfect relationship. Everything else is going to be perfect. And that's not the case. And changing your life should never be about losing weight, because that's a temporary thing for many people. And especially when you go about it using kind of a diet. So I love the fact that you talk about having a higher purpose, not just so I can look good, but being woke is about being woke on all levels, emotionally, spiritually, financially, etc. And then the second thing you said that I want to highlight is you're just a font of wisdom, first of all. But the whole thing about old demons, and I call it residue from the past or remnants from the past. And when you have these remnants from the past, they're old beliefs that come up and they just kind of whisper in your ear, you can't do that. You think you can do that. Why is it taking so long for this to happen? Why are you spending so much money on this? These are my demons. So I don't know if your voices are the same, but whatever those little voices are that tell you that you're not worthy, that you're not loved, any of those things, if you can shift your perspective to recognize that those are just remnants from your past, and you don't need to listen to them. A friend of mine calls them the difference between when you were in that poverty mindset, poverty attitude, the voices were like a Doberman, growling and so on. And now these remnants, these voices that are remnants, are more like a little Chihuahua bark.
Yes.
So you don't have to be afraid of them. You don't have to pay attention to them. You can just say, oh, okay, I hear you. I'm moving forward.
Exactly. It's a big shift. The thing about when you overeat or when you overspend, you isolate yourself because you don't want people to see how much you eat or how much you overspend, because then you always have people that say, do you really need to eat that much, or do you really need to spend that much? So I found myself always being by myself. And, you know, I like being by myself. I like sitting at home reading or whatever, but isolating yourself can be the biggest enabler to your like dysfunction. Because when you're by yourself and that self-talk in your head is going off. You're sitting there eating, you're sitting there spending, and there's nobody there to encourage you and to support you. So you need to surround yourself with people that are going to help you, encourage you, hold you down, so you're not by yourself. Isolating yourself is the worst thing you can ever do. And at my worst, I never wanted to see anybody because I was so ashamed. So ashamed.
And many times people isolate themselves because they are ashamed of how they look, they're ashamed
Mhm.
of their size, and so on. And again, I would encourage our listeners to ask yourself what's beneath that shame and what's the cause of that shame, and allow yourself to go there. And if you need help and support, get that help and support through therapy or support groups. There are many of those available nowadays. And I think that's a worthwhile endeavor rather than spending the hundreds and thousands of dollars that people are spending now on diets and the latest fad
Yes.
weight loss. Spend the money buying a book that would help
Yes.
about this topic, or spend your money seeing a therapist to help deal with past trauma or other abuse issues in the past and low self-esteem. Do you mind if I ask you if you ended up doing any therapy work and if you have had any childhood issues that led to your getting to this place?
Oh gosh, yeah. Yes to all of it. When I was 21 years old, I was a victim of rape. And then I remember right after that, I didn't deal with it at all. I sort of pushed it away because I was taught you get up, you brush yourself off, and you just deal with it. And for years, I did not make the correlation between how I was feeling emotionally and what I was doing financially.
Yeah.
I was in free fall for like years.
Yeah.
And I finally went to go see my chiropractor, who's really helped me become aware of how the rape has really impacted my life, my relationship with men, my relationship with food, my relationships with money. But just because he brought it to my attention, I really wasn't ready to deal with it at that time.
Right.
And maybe it took, with me going back to school, I lost my job at the time and I decided to go back to school. I thought it was a great time. And I had all these other traumas that came upon me. My dad died. My mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I was under an incredible amount of stress. And I was eating so much. At that time, I didn't have any money, so I couldn't spend it. But I was eating so much. And I just sat there thinking, you cannot live your life this way. So I do go see a therapist. I do see them all the time. And it helps because to me, therapy just gives you another perspective because you're always in your own head. I always felt like I'm always in that negative self-talk. I'm always in my own head. And my therapist, she's just like, no, Francine, that's not how it is. She just comes with the simplest kind of thinking, the simplest kind of perspective. And I'm thinking, and it's such a revelation to me because I'm like, I never even thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And so it's been really good. This is the first time in my life, and I get a little emotional about it. I'm so excited because now I know I'm facing the demons that I've had. I can move forward and I can move forward confidently and I can deal with stresses of life, normal stresses of life, and I can deal with them comfortably and I can deal with them healthy in a healthy kind of way. I don't have to eat or be so out of control.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that
No problem.
part of your story. I think it's something that people are reluctant to talk about, especially as Black women. There's even a name for what you described. It's called the strong Black women syndrome.
Yes.
And I think as Black women, we know we were raised by strong Black women.
Yes.
Who had to deal with a lot of stuff, and grandmothers who had to deal with a lot of stuff. And, the deal was you just brush yourself off and keep going.
Yes.
Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. And you don't deal with it. And that's what happens. And so I think there may be other people like us listening who are from the Black community and know that strong Black woman syndrome. And it's great in that it gets you through a lot of crap.
Yes.
It can be bad when you feel like you don't need help.
Exactly.
That was one of the biggest things I learned when I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and couldn't work for 2 years and was destitute, really almost lost everything. I couldn't practice medicine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I kept just pushing myself.
Wow.
And finally, I realized that the cause of my problem was that I was pushing myself despite being sick and not being able to function, really. And I had to ask for help. And that was the hardest thing I ever did, to ask someone to pick up my child from school, to try to get a friend to bring me something to eat, or whatever I needed. Just asking for help was so far out of my comfort zone. It was ridiculous,
Yes.
I just kept thinking, I can do it. I can do it. And that was part of the thing that I learned. And I think that's part of what you were describing just now.
Oh, yeah. And I think when we share our stories, I think people are like, wow, you went through some stuff too. Yeah, I did. And it gives them freedom to share their own story. And so now they can come out and have love and be encouraged because they're not alone in this whole process. And so thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it. I love sharing my story.
Yeah, and your story is a great one. And I think it brings up a lot of topics that, as I said, we don't talk enough about. So I hope to have you on again sometime soon, because I think there's still a lot more on this topic that we haven't even covered.
I would love it. I would definitely love it.
Okay, Francine, thanks again for being on the show, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much.
You have been listening to the Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross Show. Please visit CarolynRossMD.com. That's CarolynRossMD.com to access podcasts, show archives, and more about Dr. Ross and her services.